Welcome to the Leader to Leader podcast. I'm your host, Susan Spears. Our guest today is Joshua Summits. He is the Director of Economic Development and Tourism for the city of Fredericksburg here in the state of Virginia. Welcome, Josh.
Good morning, Susan.
Yeah, I'm so happy to see you here today. Lately, we've been seeing each other at a lot of economic development events and so forth around the region, and it's been terrific to see you.
Always good to get out in the field.
Yeah, always good to see you. He's like, okay, Susan, let me tell you a little bit about his bio so we can just dive right in, and you can hear a little bit more about him, and he's got some great things to share about his leadership journey. So Josh, who's sitting here with me today, has been with the city of Fredericksburg since 2024, but he does have more than a decade's experience working for local governments in community and economic development positions. In particular, he was most recently with Stafford County, which is part of our region, and he was with their Department of Economic Development as their business development manager. And he also had an acting director role before coming over to the city of Fredericksburg. Prior to that, he also worked in economic development in a few positions in Pennsylvania. And earlier, he earned his bachelor's degree in urban and regional planning from West Virginia University and a master's degree in urban planning from the Indiana University of Pennsylvania. Of course, the way I know him best, not just in community, is because he is a graduate of Leadership Fredericksburg. How's that for a good intro for you, Josh?
Class of 21, best class ever, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yes, class of 2021, and he says best class ever. So I'm sure we'll touch on that during our discussion. So again, welcome. I'm glad to have you with us.
Yep.
All right, now tell us more about you. I said a little bit of just the professional piece, but let's hear more about your leadership journey.
Yeah. So, happy. I'm, glad to be here in Fredericksburg. This, grew up in Southwest PA, but Fredericksburg's really my home now, right? So
Okay.
Always wanted to get to this, this part of the state, this part of the country. Just took me a few years, right? But I would say my leadership journey it's been an evolving roller coaster, right? And that's not a bad thing because I love roller coasters, right? It's really the leadership journey started back 2011. Just started out, mid-20s. Just started into my first economic development position in the city of Johnstown. Not in any sort of director's role, but just sort of got started and really got the ball rolling, right?
What was it like there? What tell us a little about the location.
Yeah. So Johnstown, small historic steel coal town, southwest part of the state.
Yeah.
Best known for their floods, right? 1889, 77.
Oh my goodness.
Right. So flood city, but for years and years and years, it was a steel town. It was a coal town, right?
Oh, okay.
Heavily dependent on two industries that were no longer there.
Oh my goodness.
So,
yes.
When we look at the vibrant downtown and the economy that we have in this region, it was a lot of like two steps forward and one step back type of thing. Right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
A big thing was like a new Rite Aid downtown, right? That was like big.
It's
that
awesome.
was a big project, right? But you cut your teeth, right, with that level, and still look back at that with very fond memories, right? But there was, right? So, it was a bunch of us were working in different organizations. Like I said, we're in our mid-20s. We're taking on the world, right?
Yeah.
And before I knew it, blink of an eye, there I am. Spent about 4.5, 5 years there, but turned around and I'm sitting on multiple boards. Goodwill, Southwest Allegheny, Young Professionals, one or two different arts organizations, right? So really just got plugged right in, right, to a lot of these.
It's good.
A lot of these sort of leadership roles on boards. As I'm a kid, right? Sort of learning my way through.
Really cool exposure at that age.
Yeah. So and that started me down this path, right? No, there's and I say roller coaster because there's been ups and downs, right?
Yeah, of course.
Maybe talk about get into a little bit later, right? But you sort of As you move on to different positions, maybe take a step back every now and then to sort of get a breather. But sort of, here in this position now with the city of Fredericksburg, trying to find that balance where, out in the community, being involved, but also, finding that work-life balance that I think I lost for a few years. Right?
Yeah, that happens. And, we do talk about it a lot on the podcast with different folks. It's 2025 now, but we're really still just barely past what we would consider that pandemic, and while we've evolved out of it, a lot of the challenges that we have, like with economic development, are things that came about from the pandemic. So when you say, okay, my throat just got a little goofy on me. When you say you came out of a really busy time, that balance is part of the roller coaster that's going to come up and down all throughout the career. So it sounds like you're getting to a place where you've got it pretty well under control now.
Yeah, and it takes a little bit of time, right? And it takes experience, right, to know what your balance is, right? Yeah. And everyone's balance, I think, is a little bit different. And as you get older, as your family dynamics change, sometimes you have more time, sometimes you enter into youth soccer season right now and you have 3 days disappear, right, where you could be, right? So your balances shift and change, right? And maybe it's depending on the season as well. So, yeah.
Well, the role that you have as the Director of Economic Development and Tourism for the city of Fredericksburg, I think it's a coveted role. A lot of people would like to have that role. And again, congratulations on that being your role. And I remember when you came over last year and we sat down and talked about some of your plans and all that. But it is a big leadership position. And I think one of the things that you talked about doing was getting out and really getting to know people and talking to folks in the different corridors. So how's that been going?
I would say slower than what I thought, right? Or slower than anticipated, right? It was still we're still conversations, right? I would say structured conversations.
Yeah,
and and some of that's we're a small staff, right? Like a lot of these organizations. And if there was 3 of us, right, or 3 of me, right, we could get a lot more done, right? But it's it's trying to I think there's some conversation later, but it's going back to trying to find that balance and pivoting a little bit in certain times with changes that come in. But
I know there's always some fire that gets in the way. And then the piece about your desire to chat with everybody, it's so great because you get out and you get the stories, but that also takes longer than some of the technical work that we do.
Yeah.
Because when you do have the time to go and hear those stories, it's very rich, but time consuming.
Yeah,
so
it's,
a good goal.
From a department wide, we're still looking to stand up that structured BRE program throughout the city, right? So we're, it's not just that focus on Caroline Street and William Street, right? It's getting out and talking to the businesses in the industrial park, talking to the smaller, independently owned stores in Central Park, right? And also the ones that are scattered throughout the city, right? On a more structured basis, not just like you said, when a fire comes up or
I know,
hey, the phone rings or an email comes in and you're out trying to help that business with those needs. But we're hoping by we get through the summer, springtime that around fall time we can roll out really that a much more structured attack.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, it helps me trying to as I watch you in the community and see your impact as you're talking with folks and really getting passionate about different things that we're doing. Along the way with your journey, I'm sure you've had some mentors or people that have influenced you. Is there anyone in particular, or maybe more than one, that comes to mind that you'd want to share?
Yeah, I'd say more than one, right?
Okay. Yeah.
I've had the opportunity to have a number of different leaders, right? A number of different people that I've worked under as directors or whatever the title is, and I can look back and say I've taken a little bit from each of them, right? I can't say that I'm modeling myself after one, one person, one leader, But I want to say, my style's a little bit of everyone, right? And a lot of myself, but it's, I would say my first director in economic development, Jim White, City of Johnstown was, I look back and it was a short, he was only there for about a year and a half or 2 years, until he retired. But I look back at his style and it was, it's enjoy the ride, right? Because celebrate the small victories.
Okay, that's important.
But it's enjoying the journey, enjoying the ride, and yeah.
So did that open up your eyes to think about it? I remember, this is a random example. When I was in college, right? And you always had these deadlines and tests and things you had to do, and it was hard, and you're young and you don't want to do all that. And I would walk around campus with like the world on my shoulders. It's so dark. And I was a music major, and my piano professor told me to look around you, right? Yeah. Same way. Right. And see the beauty and like notice, I was in Richmond, Virginia. Notice the flower coming up in a crack of the concrete. And I really couldn't see all that before he said it, because I was just stuck in my little world, And then I started to notice the world around me. And when you really do that, and then that's your journey expands and you see so much more. And that him being your first, he had the ability to impact you that way, it sounds like.
And it's, and it's you said it's look around, right? Being a planning major, being a geography major, right? Being in economic development. A lot of people, you walk down the street and a lot of people are straight ahead, right? Just getting to where you're going.
Yes.
But take some time, look up, right? Look up, right? Look around. You don't know what, take in the architecture. It's, I find a lot of time driving, you're sort of staring straight ahead, right? But it's those opportunities when you're in the passenger seat, right? You can actually look out and take in what's going on in those surroundings. The same thing can be said. It's just enjoy what's going on, because, going back to what you said about deadlines, it's, today, tomorrow might seem like it's the way to the world, right? But next week you're sitting back and it's like, all right, we made it through that, right? And now it's on to the next, the next sort of item on the list, right? If you could say,
next. Well, speaking of that, tell us more about what you think is kind of your leadership style. How would people that have worked with you describe you?
I want to say it's very much like my personality, like even keel,
low key
and even keel. Yeah, steady, balanced, sort of stable, right? Even though I'm saying it's a roller coaster, right? I try to have that sort of that even, stay between the highs and the lows.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, that's my leadership style. But also, you got to be ready to dive in there, right?
Right.
Get your hands dirty and help out within your organization. Whenever needed, right? And whether it's a large project or a small project, we're all working as a team towards the same goal. So it's got to be ready to sort of move from a big project down to filming a podcast for one of our videos, right? So it just you never know with what we do, what that day's going to bring.
I would think that your days are similar to some of our days here at the Chamber of Commerce, in that there's a similarity to them, but yet they're often, every day's different.
Very much so.
Yeah. And that keeps you engaged, right? Because you can run the spectrum.
Yeah. You look at your schedule on a Sunday night, right? And you think your week ahead is gonna hold, right? And then it can change real quick, right? So it's but that's a lot of part of what makes what I do fun, right? It's every day's different, right?
Well, you described it's great to have a leader that remains calm, especially in the midst of when there's a lot going on. So it sounds like that's a really great quality for you. What is a characteristic or quality you think that every great leader should have?
And I think we talked about this a little bit earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes, and I struggle with this myself, and I will admit that, learning, it's sometimes it's okay to say no, right?
Yes.
To something new, right? Taking on a new project, taking on a new initiative. Right. We all have just, a limited amount of bandwidth, right? So, I've done this too often, right? And I try not to do it. It's taking on too much sometimes, right? Getting overextended and losing sort of, some of your ability to really get things executed and done.
Yeah, time management is so important, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you use task lists? How do you stay on top of stuff?
Rolling paper to-do lists, right?
Okay, paper. Yes, same.
Marking them off with a highlighter, and as the page fills up, we'll roll over to the next one. So what you do is probably the same. If I can keep the lists at a steady number, right? Because sometimes it seems you're adding more to the to-do list, and then you're checking off, right? And I think some of that goes back to sort of what organically is happening, but also our ability to, like I said, sometimes say no, right? Or at least not right now.
Well, you start to trust yourself more as you evolve, I think, on where the yeses should be. Because the yeses are aligned with the mission of what you're doing, but also I think aligned with, okay, is it going to get in the way of me? I really like the idea of this one board or committee. Mm-hmm. Is it feasible for me to balance that with family, work, self?
Yeah.
All of
finding
that.
that keeping that work-life family balance. And it ties right into that, because, we're working 40 to 60 hours a week, right? I mean, a lot of us are. And, when you get too many of those 60-hour weeks, it's
right.
You throw that balance off, right? So,
we never used to talk about stuff like work, family, balance and all back in the, I say back in the day, but it just, so many of the great things that leadership takes into account these days, just it was more, task and get her done for a long time. So it's great to see the world kind of evolve and recognize the need to have those kind of buckets that are recognized, and they're going to flex in and out from time to time, but keeping your eye on that for yourself as a leader.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned sort of 21, the peak COVID, right? I think we learned, a lot of us learned then that we can't get some things done outside the office, right? So if you need to take your kids to the doctor's appointment, pick them up from school, right? I'm going to be able to make up some of this work, right?
Right.
In the evening at another point. So it's
there's some blurred lines there that also in the workforce weren't there. Like I'm sure when you first started out, I know for certain with when I'm a bit older than you, when I started out, in that, there's that computer at home and the things you can do, to flex your hours. Yeah. So it's good to be able to control that. I like that ability. When you think about somebody that might be starting out, because it's a unique kind of field you're in. Certainly it may not feel that way to you, but everybody out there doesn't know what an economic developer is, and being involved in that, like what would you say to somebody wanting to start out with that kind of a career?
That's a great question, because you're right. When 2000, when I was getting into college, right, there was no economic development degree, right? There is now, right? So you can go OU, Oklahoma University, you can go, right, as an undergrad, right?
Nice.
But then it was, I didn't know, I couldn't tell you 25 years ago I was going to be in economic development, right? I went from, thinking I was going to be a civil engineer, right?
Okay.
In my senior year of high school to changing it up and looking at geography and really not knowing whether it was going to be planning or GIS, and going down the planning route with 2 degrees, but never working as a true planner, right? Never sitting in a planning office. Evolved from really first career in more community development, doing a lot of like CDBG work, housing rehab programs, water lines, sewer lines with the redevelopment authority, for a few years before pivoting into economic development. So I would say, for someone just getting started, if you're looking at economic development, if you're looking for something that I consider exciting, if you're looking for something that every day is going to be a little bit different, right? It's worth a look at as a career. So
very different part of the equation, planning to there, and I was on the city's planning commission for a few years. Not the best fit for me because I'm glad I did it and became you have to be a certified planning commissioner to do it. So you had to do all that testing and stuff. And boy, was that a challenge. Learned a lot, got to be into the details. Deep details,
Yes.
That's what that one is. And I'm more of the policy or let's persuade someone. Let's get the issue. Let's probably what some would call the political side of it is more of an interest to me. And I think economic development falls right kind of in between them.
It plays in a little bit of the gray, right?
Yeah.
So, when you look at a comp plan, when you look at maybe much more the zoning ordinance, right? Things are very black and white.
Yeah.
Right.
You're right.
Can or you can't. And if it's a maybe, there's a path forward, right? Through variances or conditional use permits. Whereas, like you said, like a lot of for what I do, it's a balance between the two, right? Working within our existing rules and regulations, but also working with political leaders and business leaders in that political spectrum, right? And finding a balance between those two. It's both very challenging and fun, right?
It is. It's kind of funny. Our listeners can't see us, but we're in a room that overlooks the canal path and all here. And I closed 2 of the 3 windows, but left one open. And a guy just went by with a leaf blower, really, really loud right there. I was like, not going to be distracted. Just got distracted. I'm just sharing that with you, listeners, in case you can hear it in the background. It's great. All right, I've got another one here for you, Josh. I like to talk about what are the good days, but also what do you find most difficult?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Like what I see he's thinking.
Yeah, I am thinking on this one. What would be most difficult? I was saying I like to think that I'm prepared. So most difficult, I would say, is trying to be prepared for every situation, right? Which is near impossible.
Yes.
You walk into a meeting or, a speaking event like this, right? Or, anything in between, right? And you have your talking points. You think you know what you need to say or going to say. And then there's always that curveball, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the need to be, really comprehensively prepared for a lot of different situations, right? So, because a lot of what we do, we're not experts in any one subject,
right?
We know a little bit about everything, and sometimes more in other subjects. Mm-hmm. So it's, trying to find the balance of needing to be sort of expert level prepared. I'm air quoting when I say that, right? Expert level prepared on certain subjects. When really, people spend their careers, working within one field, having that knowledge, we need to, have that balance of having knowledge in a lot of different sectors,
right?
A lot of different fields. Because when you look at, what we do from a business attraction standpoint, we may work in 4 or 5 different sectors, right? And every locality is a little different, right? So when I was in Stafford, very focused on, logistics, distribution, cybersecurity, IT security, data centers, right? So, you're on the road to a trade show, talking to companies, right? And there's a lot of prep time, leading up to those, trying to get yourself knowledgeable of that sector, right? So you can carry on those in-depth conversations, right, with a company, not just about your selling points for your locality, for the region, but like about what they do and how it fits into your ecosystem.
Got you. Now, you also work with a lot of other folks in your industry, like you trade ideas or even sometimes clients, I guess, or prospects if another locality might be a better fit. What is that like?
Yes, I think it's changed a lot over the last 15, 20 years, whereas, when I first started in economic development in 2010, 2011, right, things were a lot more siloed.
I got you.
Even our chamber, right? When I said our chamber back then, it was City of Johnstown, right? So it was, every state's a little different, right?
Right.
Pennsylvania's certainly a lot different than how Virginia operates. Whereas Virginia is a lot more involved statewide. Certainly funded better, right, from the economic development standpoint, with VDP. Whereas Pennsylvania you're sort of on your own a little bit, right? Everyone sort of operated in their own silos, and if you can get a project done, it was great, right? Whereas Virginia here, the state does an amazing job, and they're continuing to do a great job funding site development funds, right? The state's lagging to some of our peer states and getting sites ready for larger scale development. The state continues to fund that. The state does a great job of getting out on the road and bringing in leads. And a lot of those funnel through our regional groups, which for us would be Fredericksburg Regional Lines.
Right.
And I think I talked a little bit about it the other week, right? Even within our region, within the FRA region, we may be competing against some of our peer, even locally here for a project, because they may say, we want to be on the I-95 corridor and we're looking for X, right? And, it's going to fall within our region. And, a lot of sites are going to be the same, but it's for those companies, it's access to workforce, it's access to schools and childcare and everything in between. So, I mean, when we compete locally and regionally, and we're sharing a lot of those assets, right? So I remember time in Stafford, it's quality of life a lot of times when you're talking to these companies. So you're pulling in those regional assets, right? You're talking about downtown Fredericksburg. You're talking about the baseball stadium. You're, depending on the sector, you're talking about Quantico or AP Hill, Dahlgren, a lot of those regional assets depending on sector. So to a certain extent, we play very regionally.
Yes.
Because a win in Caroline County for a major facility could be a win for Spotsylvania, right? Or the city.
Absolutely.
Depending on what type of workforce they're bringing in. So, I would say just because, say Spotsylvania County would win a project doesn't mean the city doesn't win as well, right?
Right. And for some of our listeners, Spotsylvania County is right next door, part of the Fredericksburg region. And they have a big project coming in another year or so, Kalahari, right? And so just like the ballpark that you've mentioned is great for folks in Spotsylvania, but it's in the city of Fredericksburg. Kalahari will expand out in, all directions. And so we look at that whole region and we really have it all here. It's pretty darn cool.
Yeah.
So if you don't know the Fredericksburg region, if you're somebody listening from some other part of the country or the world, you should check us out. We're technically about an hour south of Washington, D.C., and I say it that way because there's this thing called traffic that can make it a much longer trek, right?
I'd say we're very spatially located.
Yeah.
Really well, right?
We are.
Depending on what time of day you leave, right? You can, north and south, you're in major metros.
It's amazing.
And you go east, you get the water, and you go west, you get the mountains, right?
I know it.
So it's a little bit of all good things.
You
right?
can be right there for whatever your desire is. If, to your point, on the East Coast where we're positioned, right here. It's just fantastic. So most of the struggles we have in the Fredericksburg region are struggles of our success, and how we handle our growth and development. Yeah. So those are we're lucky that way. We're very fortunate that way.
We are, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think my quote later, if we get there, maybe.
Yeah, we're just about there. I'm looking at the time.
We're getting there. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, we're doing great. We're doing great. I'm
Yeah.
just getting ready to wind us down. He's like, "What? We just started." Yeah. So go ahead and share with me a favorite motto or quote that you have.
And sort of ties into what you were just saying there.
Yeah.
And I've been working on this one a little bit. I heard it a few years ago at a conference or a meeting. It's traffic's not a bad thing, right? It means you're either somewhere or going somewhere where people want to be.
Mm-hmm.
If you're somewhere where there's no traffic, typically means you are somewhere where no one wants to be or no one wants to go, right? So you can play that a couple different ways, right? Whether you're talking about traffic on 95 or Route 3 or 17 or clusterings of types of businesses or industries, right? So when you see clusters of industries, that means they are somewhere where they want to be. If you're heading south on 95 on the weekend, you're going the same direction where other people want to go and want to be, right? So,
yes,
you look at other parts, of the country, of other parts I live with, just not a lot of traffic, right? So
it's not the issue here.
It's not
You're
the
right.
issue here, right? And you can, whether right or wrong, that's sort of when I heard that, and I've tweaked it a little bit. It sort of stuck with me, right?
I love it.
The traffic thing, because it's not just vehicle traffic, right?
Right. And by the way, when you guys check out Fredericksburg, listeners, there's some great trails all around the city. These weren't here 20 years ago to the extent it is now. That really connect neighborhood to neighborhood and portions of the city to other areas. So we have very active folks out on the trails and just really enjoying it at all times.
It's, whether it's water, whether it's mountain bikes, whether it's hybrid street trails, or, put on your hiking boots, right? And you could do all three in the same day, right? And we have that, we're blessed to have that, ability here, right?
We do.
To park your car and your kids might be on the bike on the canal trail, and you could be on the river path, right?
Yes.
Putting some miles on. So
I think the trail over, I do live in downtown Fredericksburg. The trail, I think it's 5 miles. The one part like from over near me, and then you go around.
I think it's 3.1. The canal trail, I think it's 3.1. I used to run that a lot when I was doing some.
I made
some
it 5.
Work, right?
I need it to be 5.
Yeah,
I made it up.
You need to go back to the gravel road, right?
Yeah,
and then loop it around. You can add, I think, an extra mile on that way. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll talk about that more later. Yeah. Anything else you'd like to share with our listeners?
No, it was. It was, it's been a privilege to be here. Like you said, it went a lot quicker than anticipated. It's been a while since I've done one of these. So,
it really does. We have fun. I mean, I could ask you all your favorite books and all that kind of stuff, but I didn't. He told me ahead of time he was not going to talk about my guy, Tom Brady. It's a shame. We wanted him to do that. It's a joke, people. It's a joke. And all of that. Who's your favorite team?
I'm still holding on to my Pittsburgh roots a little bit. But, the longer I'm here, that team up the road in the burgundy and gold seems to look pretty good as well, right, too. So, yes.
I love it. There are a lot of Steelers fans in this area. You know that.
Yeah.
It's super interesting.
It came back to a lot of different things. It's, a lot of people moved out in the late 70s.
Yeah.
With the collapse of the steel and coal industries in Southwest PA. But I've met a lot of people that came here to teach. Right out of undergrad, and just have decided to stay in the region.
Yeah,
so,
which is
great.
Good place to be. All right, well, we'll help you get closer to that burgundy and gold. They're always my first favorite. Yeah, so all good. And that's the Washington Commanders to anybody that's not in the know. We'll let you know. All right, well, it's been great spending a little time with you today. Our guest has been Joshua Summits, who is the Director of Economic Development and Tourism for the City of Fredericksburg here in Virginia. I'm Susan Spears with the Fredericksburg Regional Chamber, and we thank you for joining us today and hope we'll see you for the next episode.